guys, welcome back to another Danganronpa video. This is actually a remake of my last Danganronpa video. What if Danganronpa motives were switched? Because I made a lot of errors in that video, and this video is here to correct those errors. Now, the Danganronpa motives have impacted the plot in various different ways. Different students interact with the motives differently. But what if the motives were switched? In this video, we're going to do what if Trigger Happy Havoc and Killing Harmony motives were switched. So without further ado, let's get started. We'll start with Trigger Happy Havoc with the Killing Harmony motives. Now, immediately, Makoto wakes up at his desk and goes to meet the other students, two of which are Sayaka and Kyoko, the two that he would have a big connection with. Sayaka immediately and Kyoko later on. And so, Monokuma then introduces himself and introduces the first motive, the first blood perk. After a murder has taken place, if the black ink comes forward and admits to killing, then they get to escape the killing game scot-free and unharmed. Now, immediately, with this motive, the first chapter doesn't change too much. Mukuro, still disguised as Junko, gets impaled in multiple directions. Now, there's also a time limit to this motive. If a murder doesn't occur within 48 hours, everyone forced into the killing game will die. This naturally causes Sayaka to start breaking down, because only Junko and Mukuro have entered the killing game willingly. Everyone else has been forced into it, meaning everyone except those two will die. Sayaka breaks down. Makoto, being the good boy he is, decides to talk to her. And because, naturally, the two of them have sort of a thing for each other. However, Sayaka still hatches that plan because she doesn't want to die due to the 48-hour time limit. She makes a plan to attack Leon, which backfires immensely and leads to her death. Yeah, sorry. Sayaka still dies, even with the new motive. Now, the question is, does Leon take the first blood perk? I think he's selfish enough to do that. I mean, now would be when everyone hears about the class trial, and so Leon, not wanting to go through with that, decides to take the first blood perk. So let's go ahead, put him up here. I think Leon is selfish enough to avoid going through the trial and being executed, meaning he would take the first blood perk and escape. Chapter 2 begins. Now the motive videos are distributed in their sleep. Now, you gotta know that the motive videos in Killing Harmony are different to the ones in Trigger Happy Havoc. In Killing Harmony's motive videos, no one is held hostage, unlike in Trigger Happy Havoc. And so, that's why Kirumi murdered Ryoma in canon, because she felt that she wanted to go back to her job and protect her people. Chihiro gets his motive video and goes to tell Mondo because he admires him. And without his jealousy in play, because he doesn't have the secret of his brother getting out, Mondo doesn't kill Chihiro. Instead, he sympathizes with him, and the two start training together. Two other students aren't as lucky, Hifumi and Celeste. Hifumi might get Celeste's motive video, and naturally, because of the master-slave relationship that the two have, Hifumi shows it to Celestia, which infuriates her, and therefore, Hifumi is killed. Yeah. And so when the class trial begins, Makoto pins it on Celestia, and she is executed. Yeah, these two die a chapter earlier than in canon. Alright, chapter 3 now. Transfer student from beyond the grave. This is where students can use the Necronomicon to bring back one of the recently deceased students, either Mukuro, Sayaka, Hifumi, or Celestia, as a transfer student. Even though some of these guys have canon religions, none of them are as religious as Angie, which means nobody will take this motive seriously. The only one who probably would is Yasuhiro, but even then, he still probably wouldn't take the motive seriously because he's not as religious as Angie. And so, this chapter could be skipped altogether. Okay, so chapter 4. Now, this is where things start to get interesting. Chihiro, I feel, is someone who could program the virtual world, meaning it still exists. And, oh, the motive is the key card. Junko snatches it up, and with Mukuro dead, she doesn't have to worry about anybody. And so, unfortunately, once the virtual world is over, Chihiro is found dead. Yeah, sorry, Chihiro. However, Chihiro being alive for longer means that some things have changed. Now, as far as the class trial is concerned, it goes the same way as Chapter 2 in canon, except this time the evidence does point to frame Mondo, but Mondo wasn't the one who killed him. Remember when Byakuya accused Genocide Jack of killing Chihiro in canon? Well, in this timeline, he's actually right. It turns out that Junko told Toko that she could be with Byakuya if she had done a favor for her. So she throws pepper in Toko's face, causing her to sneeze, triggering Genocide Jack. And so, Genocide Jack will probably see Chihiro as a cute boy and try and cut him up with her scissors, much like she tried to do with Makoto. Yep, guess who's getting executed? So when Toko transforms back during the class trial, Toko doesn't remember everything until Junko blurted it out, and so Toko is executed and she is squished flat when trying to go kiss Byakuya. Now, I'm just going to give you a little bit of heads up before we continue here. This chapter is going to get a little bit more headcanon-y than what we normally do in this alternate timeline videos. So, if you don't like what you're about to see, here's the timestamp to go to the Killing Harmony section. For those who are remaining, here we go. So immediately when the group heads into the gym, somebody notices that Yasuhiro isn't there. Now, who it is a matter of debate. It's most likely Makoto, but it could be anybody. Could be Aoi, could be Sakura, could even be Taka. And so, for a little bit, nothing out of the ordinary seems to be happening. That is until a strange, mysterious, masked, bloody figure is found on the floor. To make matters even more confusing, Kyoko finds out that Mukuro's dead body is taken out of the cryogenic freezer. Now, since everybody knows Mukuro, they knew that Mukuro got impaled, there's an even bigger mystery floating around. That Yasuhiro could just be hiding, or that Yasuhiro is the guy in the masked figure. And so, now comes the case that Kyoko and Makoto have to solve. Since Yasuhiro doesn't have a crystal ball anymore because Leon threw it to get rid of the shirt, and unfortunately this does mean that Yasuhiro is missing in action, and so when the class trial begins, nobody could figure out what's going on. Nobody could figure out that Yasuhiro might not even be the guy in the bloody masked figure. And so his time is running out, and so Kyoko blames Makoto, even though Makoto figures out that the trial is a trap. So Makoto has that breakdown and asks everybody if they're out of their minds. Makoto is executed. However, because Chihiro lived longer, Makoto allowed Alter Ego to hack into the school's system, meaning that Makoto is still saved from his execution by Alter Ego. Leading us to Chapter 6 and the final 8. Now, Makoto figures out some holes, and so alongside Kyoko, they challenge Monokuma to a retrial of the 5th case. And so Makoto figures out that the mastermind, and indeed the Chapter 5 killer is Junko Enoshima. He hypes the group up with his hope, and Makoto and Junko have a vote off, and so everyone abstains from voting, and Junko is found guilty, and she drags herself to her punishment, meaning we have an impressive 8 survivors. Half of the cast survived this go-around. The survivors are Aoi, Byakuya, Kiyotaka, Kyoko, Leon, Makoto, Mondo, and Sakura. Yeah, with the killing harmony motives, an impressive 8 people survived. Now it's time for killing harmony with the trigger happy Havoc motives. Just like in the previous part, different students react to the motives differently. So with that, let's get started with killing harmony. The first motive is killing amongst loved ones. Each student receives a motive video where the thing that they are closest with is held hostage. Now, keep in mind that these motive videos are not the same as the ones in the Trigger Happy Havoc section in the previous part. So, for example, Rantaro would get his 12 sisters being held hostage. Now, even though Rantaro would probably see himself as a bad older brother for letting his sisters be kidnapped, he probably won't kill over it. Someone who will, though, is Tenko, after she finds out that her master has been kidnapped. Now, Rantaro is suspicious, but I don't think that Tenko would go after Rantaro because even though she might think he's suspicious because he's a male and he wouldn't really want to talk about his survivor perk at first, instead, Tenko would probably go after the first man she comes across, which just so happens to be Ryoma. Why Ryoma? Well, let's face it, he didn't really want to live much anyway, so he'd probably welcome his death. And a fun fact, had Rantaro not been the first victim, Ryoma would have been the first canon death instead. Now, the class trial begins, and obviously, because of the evidence and the motive video, Tenko is the first to be executed. Yeah, that's going to be a bad start for Himiko because her best friend essentially was killed the first chapter, similar to how Shuichi felt in canon after Kaede died. Okay, chapter 2. Now, chapter 2's motive is embarrassing memories and shameful secrets. Each student is passed out their hints, and if a murder doesn't occur within 24 hours, all of their secrets will be revealed to the outside world. Now, immediately, this might end up rubbing some students the wrong way, specifically Maki. But with Shuichi and Kaito by her side, she probably wouldn't kill. And in this timeline, the training trio would actually expand. 2 more members also join, Kaede and Rantaro. Both of them are pretty close to Shuichi, and I think that Shuichi and Rantaro would be friends in this timeline, and I even think so in canon. But back to the timeline. One of the students who does is Kirumi, whose secret is that she's the acting prime minister, and so she'd want to get out of there to save her people. Unfortunately, Kirumi is found dead before she could act on it. So when the class trial occurs, they have to figure out who killed Kirumi. And it turns out that the one who did is Kurekio, because of his shameful secret, his relationship with his dead sister. The motive is that Kurekio wanted to kill 100 people, 100 women specifically, to appease his dead sister because he wanted to get 100 friends. And so Kurekio doesn't want everyone else to know that he and his sister have an incestuous relationship. During his free time events, Kurekio and Kaede had a talk where Kaede agreed to meet his sister, even though now Kaede and Shuichi are tied at the hip, meaning that if Kurekio were to kill Kaede, then Shuichi would immediately find out. His next biggest choice would be Kirumi. And so Kyo talked to Kirumi. However, before he could get an answer out of her, he killed her. And so Kyo is executed, boiled alive, and salted by Monokuma and his sister. Okay, so Chapter 3 now. Chapter 3's motive is $10 million. The student who graduates gets $10 million, or really more, it's like 10 million yen, that they can spend on whatever they want. Now, immediately, the student council still forms. Angie, Himiko, Gonta, Kibo, and Tsumugi. They all join together to form the student council, which still happens in this timeline. However, Angie and Tsumugi form an alliance. Now, Rantaro is very suspicious. Rantaro decides to talk with the rest of his friends, which are Kaede, Kaito, Shuichi, and Maki, about his survivor perk. Unfortunately, when they go to check on him later, he is found dead. Now, Kaede wants a seance to go talk to Rantaro, and Angie agrees to set one up. Now, in canon, Himiko was originally meant to be in the seance. However, since Tenko was there, she stopped Himiko from going into the seance because she was afraid that she might die. In this timeline, however, since Tenko's already dead, nothing is stopping Himiko from going into the seance, meaning she dies. And therefore, we now have to figure out who killed both Rantaro and Himiko. And immediately, Shuichi and Kaede blame Angie because she set the seance up, and it is revealed that she was, in fact, the one who killed them both. When she is asked why, Angie responds that the money doesn't really matter much to her. She claims that Atua requires blood sacrifices, and so this is the only way that she could do things. Angie is then executed. Now, instead of carving marble on a volcano, I felt that Angie, because she worships Atua, which is a Maori deity, that she goes through a Maori exorcist method, which goes horribly wrong, causing her to drown. Chapter 4. Now, Chapter 4's motive is the betrayal. One of the students acts as Monokuma's mole. And there's no better student for this role than Kibo. Kibo in canon is known as the Eyes of the Killing Game. When this news gets out, Kokichi decides to torment Kibo even more because he's already bullying him, so that's just upping the intensity for him. Kibo decides to sacrifice himself to stop the torment and save everybody from turning on each other. And also from targeting him as well. Okay, Chapter 5. Now, even with the switched motives, the actual given motives stop here in every game. So, Chapter 5 here will probably go the same way as canon. Maki shoots the poison arrows at Kokichi. She then goes to grab the antidote, gives it to him, but then he gives it to Kaito, meaning that Kokichi dies from the poison damage below the exisals, and then in the trial, Kaito in an exisal barges in and sacrifices himself. What a Chad. I know a lot of people really love Kaito, and I can see why. One thing I don't know why is why people ship Kokichi and Shuichi. Everyone knows that Shuichi belongs with Kaede. And so Kaito is executed. Even if he wasn't the Black End, Kaito probably would have died anyway because he's sick and has a weak immune system, meaning he wouldn't survive anyway. Chapter 6 begins, and Shuichi and Kaede find evidence linking the third case that Angie was framed. With that, the two of them challenge Monokuma to a retrial, and eventually, the two of them figure out that it was in fact Tsumugi who orchestrated those murders, and was also the puppet master between herself and Angie. And so, Tsumugi is startled that she has been caught, but then she transforms into Junko, putting even more evidence against her. And so, Tsumugi is executed, and without Kibo there, the school isn't blown up. Instead, the 5 survivors are let out the normal way. Those survivors being Gonta, Kaede, Maki, Mew, and Shuichi. Did you catch any of the errors that I have fixed? Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and turn on post notifications to see all my latest content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.